I'm back. I hope it's working this time. We had to switch phones. Technology. You gotta love it, you gotta hate it. Well, this morning, as I was saying, we're going to talk about general conversation, oversteer, understeer, transforming your driving experience 5-day workshop. For show and tell, I thought I could have something interesting. We're going to talk about dry sump oiling systems because I have something that we're sending off to one of our customers. And of course, we've got the quick hitters, the questions that come from the Speed Therapy Society. If you're not a Speed Therapy Society member, please join. It's getting really good. I mean, the conversation, the camaraderie there is just outstanding. It's just amazing. You guys are great. Working down my list, I had a great big long list. I had like 4 pages today, except we're going to almost cut at the first page because Carrie has assembled a really nice team of people to help her with this because this is a lot of work. And what they're working on is doing a Facebook and YouTube simulcast live. And we were almost ready to do it this week, but that technology bug kind of got in the way. So hopefully next week we'll be doing a simulcast on YouTube and Facebook at the same time. So something to look forward to for all the people, the non-Facebook people. Okay, something we want to talk, here's something interesting. I'm going to call it this negotiation of the week. I had a 15-minute consult with Bob Bush last week. And, you know, what he really wanted, he really needed was the Kenny Brown rear grip kit for his Mustang. But he told me that I had to talk his wife into it. I said, no, that's kind of like your job. But I gave him some helpful hints, you know, what our customers have done in the past. We've done the typical stuff, candy, flowers, going out to dinner, you know, all the fluff stuff. One guy had to do, add a broom to his house. Somebody else had to take ballroom dancing. So, I mean, the range of you know, negotiation is pretty broad. But, man, this guy pulled it off. He got his rear grip kit by taking his wife out for a hamburger. And that's got to be the absolute best one yet. Everybody should, you know, give a big thumbs up for Bob. That's outstanding negotiation skills. So that brings up a question: How many of you out there have had to barter with your wife to get something for your car or to go to a track event? It'd be interesting to know what you had to give up in exchange. And for most people, it doesn't matter what you have to give up as long as you get what you want for your car. So I'd be interested to hear how many people have had to do that. Let's see. And then, okay, we're going to transform your driving experience. Starts June 22nd to 26th, day after Father's Day, 7:30 in the evening Eastern time, Monday through Friday. And I think on Friday we might put it up a little earlier, but we'll talk about that later. And again, we're going to, you can register on Speed Therapy Society. And for those who are non-Facebook people, if they want to join, email Carrie at info@kennybrown.com. She's working on ways that you can participate without having to be in the Facebook group. I got a message coming in.
We're putting a link in this thread where they can sign up.
Okay, didn't hear that. She's putting a link in the thread where you can sign up for the 5-day workshop. And you know, day one's going to be the crucial first steps that a lot of people forget. And then we'll get into building the performance platform, which is, you know, what I live and breathe. It's kind of like, this is the very first thing you have to do. And the performance platform is chassis, suspension, wheels, tires, brakes. And we'll break it into 2 parts. Part 1 is going to be more handling and suspension. Part 2 is going to be brakes, wheels, tires, and cooling, although they might interchange a little bit. That's kind of the theme for those 2 days. And day 4, we're going to talk about, you know, dialing in your car and taking what we've talked about and applying it. And then day 5 is going to be tricks, some setup techniques, driving techniques, and kind of a wrap up for the week. So be sure to register. I think it's going to be great. I think you guys can. I'm going to try to teach as much as I can so you can learn as much as you can. Getting down to our quick hitters. Let's see. Andy Menard, who was 2012 boss, wants to know about pros and cons of long tube headers versus shorty headers, and also the merits of X pipe versus H pipe. That's a good question, and I think I've got some good answers. As far as shorty headers, I've never ever liked shorty headers, even going back to the days of the Fox. I mean, it's like they try to package too much stuff into too small a space, and they're just miserable to work with. On our SN95, the Cobras, the 9904 Cobras, what I use exclusively are mid-length headers. And mid-length headers are about that long, and they're just smooth and straight. And talking to one of the engineers at Ford Racing, this is years and years ago when they're first developing the FR500 5-liter engine, he said in their development, it didn't matter the distance of different length of the pipes or the distance. All it mattered is it was a smooth transition from the exhaust port into the collector. And I kind of went by that. So in all our SN95s, we use the Bassani mid-length headers, which fit well, and they even work extremely good if you want to lower the engine because you don't have the exhaust hanging down, which we did for like on Roy's car. We're running a dry sump oiling system, and I'm going to talk about dry sumps a little later on, which is, if you don't know about them, it's kind of interesting. So as far as on the S197s, all I've ever used is the Bassani long tube headers, X-pipe, and 3-inch exhaust, all stainless. And on street, we'll use the cats, and on track, we'll use without cats. And you know, my experience, and he's also talking about he's got a Boss with the side pipes. Here's my personal experience with that. We had a customer that wanted headers and wanted to retain side pipes. So we got a brand that I won't mention because I don't talk about other people's stuff. A brand that had it was long tube headers and had the pipes at the side. And I got to be frank, the side pipes were so loud and so annoying. We couldn't even test the car around town. We kept putting the smaller and smaller disc in, and finally we just blocked it off because it was just too loud, at least for me. And what we found out is we actually, on the same car, we made better power with the long tube headers and the X-pipe versus the other one that had the long out the back and the side pipes. So that's my personal experience. As far as X-pipe and H-pipe, that's kind of an interesting conversation because I like X-pipes, but you find a lot of people who swear by H-pipes. And kind of like the simplest version is with the X-pipe, you're kind of crossing the pulses. And it actually changes the sound. And the X-pipe, it seems to improve power at the high end. And with the H-pipe, you're not exchanging pulses, you're balancing between the two pipes. And that seems to give you more low-end torque. That's kind of generally talking. I know that back when, long time ago, when we were building our own exhaust and we went to put an H-pipe in, what we do is we run the car really hard and get up under it, and then you could follow down the tube, and you could see like blue marks on the exhaust pipes coming down. Where those blue marks were, that was a hot spot. That's what put the H-pipe. So that's kind of X-pipe, H-pipe. You know, you can use either one. It doesn't matter. I think the H-pipes maybe give you more of a growl. The X-pipes, like when the Bassanis, just make a sweet sound at 7,000 RPM. So, I mean, all I've ever used is long tube Bassanis on S197s with the X-pipe 3-inch exhaust and race mufflers. And they sound just absolutely wicked.
I have a question.
A question?
From Tim Allen. He says, great topic, tube diameters too. So I'm assuming he wants you to cover the tube diameters as well. Okay,
tube diameters, and it really depends on the application, the size of the motor, and the power. I would have to go back and check. I think most of them are like 1 3/4. There's 2-inch, 1 7/8, maybe 1 5/8. I'm not sure. But the bigger the tube diameter, the more power it's going to make on the top end. The smaller, the more torque it's going to make. And on the all-aluminum 406 Windsor motor that we're building for David for his AIX car, it's going to be at maybe 650 plus horsepower. And talking to the header guy, we went to 1 7/8 versus 2-inch because that's going to give better throttle response. And for road racing, that's a little bit more what you want. So, I mean, it's the bigger the pipe, the more the flow, the lower the torque, just like anything else. So that's kind of like my view. Now, you talk to the exhaust engineer, he may have a different view, but you know, that's what I kind of know. So, anyway, that's like I say, the one video we have, me at Road America, you know, kind of beating a Viper off turn 14 and holding them off down the straightaway, and then outbraking a Porsche GT3 RS, and then carrying so much speed the carousel I passed them before the kink. That's got the Bassani long tube X-pipe and race mufflers 3-inch exhaust, and it sounds completely different outside the car than it does inside the car. I mean, outside the car, it sounds absolutely wicked.
I have a couple more comments.
Couple more comments.
just so you know, Wendy says that I went away from the Boss H pipe to complement the Ford Racing intake and lost a lot of low end and not sure I picked up enough at the top end. And then Brad says Daryl Bassani does make a great exhaust system. I know Kenny loves his products too. Okay.
Yeah, it's just a plug for Bassani. I mean, my late son Paul was really close with Daryl Bassani, and we've been using them for a long time. Really like their products. They're well made, they work good, and they're good people. So, you know, that's kind of our criteria for suppliers. And then Brandon, looks like, oh, Carrie keeps saying, hold this up. People don't like to see the top of my head. So I'll try it this. Brandon in his IRS conversion was having trouble getting the front up in the IRS, and then someone gave him some hint, Speed Therapy Society. That's what's so valuable. Someone gave him a hint on how to get it in, which is great. Something that you know, I noticed on the pictures, he had the urethane bushings in the carrier. We've never used urethane bushings. You know, first of all, to get the rubber bushings out is a real big hassle, and it smells. What we do instead is when we do our geometry improvement to the IRS carrier, we actually lop off that great big huge massive mount in the back that probably weighs maybe 5-10 pounds, and we actually build a bracket so it hard mounts right to the frame. So by hard mounting the frame in the back, we've never found a need to change the front bushing because, you know, the carrier is mounted rock solid. But I'm glad somebody helped you to get that into your car. And then I know there was another question somewhere.
There's one on the differential.
Yeah. Here we go. John is for his IRS differential. He wanted to know what differential to use in it, or is there actual IRS cars? I only use Torsons. I've used them from the very beginning. They work great in an IRS car, and no complaints. I mean, it's great that you have the torque. A Torsen is, instead of clutches that kind of slip and give you like positive traction, they've got a series of worm gears that kind of spin around, and they will actually sense torque. In the tire that has the most traction, they will shift the torque to the tire with the most grip. So that's why I like Torsons. As far as the cast iron diff versus aluminum, we personally have never found a need for the cast iron. We've never failed an aluminum differential, but then all we do is track and road racing. Don't do any drag racing. I know that a lot of guys explode them on the drag strip, but sort of like the real bottom line is, you know, IRS rear suspensions are just not made for drag racing. You know, if you do a lot of drag racing, my best recommendation is get the IRS out and put a live axle in so you can adjust your geometry and get better long-term grip. But as far as the iron, I mean, if you want to use that, fine. It's heavy. It is going to retain a lot more heat than the aluminum differential because there's more mass. It's just going to keep the heat inside, with the aluminum kind of shed off some heat. But even so, the aluminum gets hot. So you might want to consider putting a diff cooler in. Any of our IRS track cars, we always have to put a diff cooler in. And the reason for that is, you know, your IRS pumpkin is a little bitty thing, and the differential makes a lot of heat. And for driving around the street, it's okay. When you're really hammered on the track, you drive the heat up, and all you've got is a little aluminum case to capture that heat. For a live axle, you've got, you know, the iron center section, the steel tubes. You've got a lot of mass to kind of dissipate all the heat. So the IRS will overheat because there's no way to get it cool. Now we use our forward diff bushing mounts. They're aluminum and they're spaced, so it's like a heat sink, which for the street works great. But it's going to go on track with any IRS car. You've got to put a rear diff cooler in, or you're going to burn up the differential. I mean, just plain and simple like that. So with the cast iron diff, I think I'd watch my temperature really close, and you can buy temperature stickers to stick on the differential and see how hot it's getting. But I'd monitor that. Now and Mark has a really tough question. He's got his car's been pulling to the left on a hard acceleration and pulling to the right on a deceleration. Man, the list of things that could drive that is really long. But you need to think, is this one problem or is it two problems? Because, you know, you almost have to separate them and deal with one first. And typically when, you know, it's pulling on acceleration, I mean, all the power and grip is at the back. sometimes that indicates you've got a differential that's worn out. Sometimes it could be a bad shock. I mean, there's so many things it could be. And then as far as the pulling in the front, I mean, that could be alignment, it could be toe, it could be camber, it could be tire pressure. Again, it could be a shock. I mean, it could be the weight in the front's off. I mean, there's so many things it could be. It's just stuff like that. It's just a matter of creating a checklist and one by one checking off what it is until you figure out what's wrong. And I wish I could be more help, but unless I'm sitting in the car, it's really hard to diagnose over the phone, so to speak. So, as far as the hydro bushings, I just throw them away. I mean, our front grip kit, we've got urethane bushings, and we just get rid of the hydro bushing. For performance driving, that's just not the thing to have up there. So that's why our front grip kit with the control arms, the heavy-duty control arms, and the K-member, all the geometries engineered in, and we just use urethane bushings. That's the best. Remember, urethane bushings are good for anything that's moving up and down or straight and forward, not good for things like lower control arms in the back that have to twist. Let's see. I'm holding my thing up so I don't have to, you have to look at the top of my head. Oversteer, understeer. We're going to talk general conversation about oversteer, understeer. And then here, Mark McIsaac had a really big, long question. Car setup tuning, tire temperatures, pressure, fine-tuning camber, when to do it, bump and rebound, what feedback could the driver feel, changes, oversteer, understeer, etc. Car setup is an enormous topic, which you'd like to see more of. Good. And sign up for the 5-day workshop, because we're going to cover most of this in the 5-day workshop. There's way too many questions in there to try to cover on the TV. Transform Your Driving Experience is the name of the workshop, 5 days, and you can sign up. There should be a link there now to sign up. We got the sign-in page done. The team, Carrie's team. So I can take a little shift here. The reason I said technology was kind of like a real pain. Well, Carrie's put together a really nice little team to help her with this, because this is a massive amount of work. And through that team, we have people that want to, that aren't Facebook people, that still want to see what's going on. So they are working on technology to simulcast Facebook and YouTube at the same time. We almost had it this morning, but that technology bug kind of jumped in and said, I'm going to screw you guys up. So we're going to work at it, and hopefully next week we'll have live streaming on both Facebook Live and YouTube. And here we go. Here's my signs. I can't get by without signs. Oh, just in case you're joining us, I'm Kenny Brown. This is Cars and Coffee, and where I will do my best to answer some of your questions based on my lots and lots of years of experience in professional motorsports and building outrageously cool cars. Let's see I think before I get into the understeer and oversteer, remember you can send in questions, and I'll try to answer your questions live if we have time. Gotta look up, can't look down, talk to myself. Try to flip the page without looking at, that's back page 1. Okay, let's kind of move things around. The oversteer, understeer is kind of like a big topic. It's not big, it's just huge. So I'm going to kind of move that down a little bit. And what I want to talk about, we've got something kind of cool here. I've got a dry sump oil tank that we're shipping off to David for his car. And I thought you guys might be interested in knowing what a dry sump oiling system is, how it works, and what it does. Well, first of all, dry sump oiling is the fail-safe for oiling your engine. I mean, you will never ever run out of oil pressure, no matter how many G's you pull in a turn. All professional race cars have dry sump. And what is dry sump? Well, in your car right now, you change your oil, you drain the oil out the bottom, put oil on top. The oil lives in the bottom of the engine in the sump. So that's called a wet sump engine. Now, the issue with wet sump engines, when you start really setting your suspension up, like if we put my burger kit, front grip kit, and spring shock package on, you're really going to increase your cornering speeds. And what happens in cornering is the oil is going to want to slosh up the side of the oil pan, and if it gets beyond the oil pickup, it's going to suck air, and that's going to aerate, and that's not a good thing for your motor. All our track cars, we switch over to a road race oil pan, which has more capacity, number one, plus it has a bunch of little squares in there around the around the pickup. So they kind of control it. No matter how much the oil sloshes, there's always going to be oil to pick up. Well, the dry sump is completely different. In the dry sump, there's no oil in the pan whatsoever. In fact, the oil pan is typically about that thick, depending on the motor, anywhere from that thick to that thick. And essentially what happens is now this is typical. Now, a dry sump pump, which drives it all, can come in 3, 4, 5 stages. And each stage is a different pump, like an oil pump. And typically, like what we use, the AVI system we use on our SN95 Cobras has 3 scavengers. Now what that means is across the bottom of this really shallow aluminum pan, there's 3 inlets, and there's a scavenge pump. And the scavenge pump all the time is sucking oil out of the pan. So as soon as oil gets down, it's getting sucked out of the pan and pushed back to the oil tank. So the oil lives in a separate tank. And from there, then the oil returns back to the dry sump, and the very front pump in the dry sump is the pressure side. So oil feeds into the pressure side, then we go through the oil filter, oil cooler, and back into the engine. So no matter how hard you're driving, no matter how many G's you're pulling a corner, you never ever run out of oil pressure because there's no oil in the sump. It's living in a tank. And this is the tank I built for David, and it's being shipped out here this week. And this is a 10-quart tank, and you've got the inlet and the outlet on the bottom. And the inlet for a dry sump, all we use is like AeroQuip lines, like AN fittings, because we don't use like rubber hose. I mean, that just is not, you don't use that in motorsports. And now I'll take another little diversion. This is what an AN fitting looks like. And just if you know what AN, and they come in like dash 4 through dash 30, I think. AN stands for Army Navy. It's a size that was standardized by the Army Navy years and years ago for different size hoses, and because they also use this, AeroQuip is like what they use in airplanes. That's why it's called AeroQuip. And this would like go on the hose. The hose would go in here, you clamp it down, and this would go onto like one of these fittings. That's a dash 10. Dash 10 is a 9/16 ID. Dash 10 we use for like any of the Coyote motors with an oil cooler, external oil filter. We use a dash 10. That seems to work plenty good. But you know, race cars, the demand for oil is a lot more. So we actually use, for the pressure side on a dry sump system, we use dash 12, which is 11/16 ID. And for the scavenge, the return, it's like a dash 12 right there. And that's for the oil feed, and for the return for the scavenge, it goes to a dash 16, which is 7/8 of an inch. So you can see that that's a pretty big hole. So scavenge oil goes in the top, and it runs through a series of plates and everything to kind of de-aerate it, and then it gets pulled out of the bottom and heads up to the dry sump pump. That's kind of like a brief overview of a dry sump system. And one more little thing we stick in the trunk. This is a dry sump breather tank. Now, the dry sump is sealed, but there's another fitting at the top, which should go to the breather tank so that all the hot gases from inside the oil tank will actually feed into here, and then it's got a breather on it, so if there is much, it'll collect in here, and it won't get all over the car. And we tell people, don't forget to tighten the little petcock on the bottom. We have one customer who forgot to and filled his trunk up with oil. So always keep it tight. So it's kind of like a real quick overview of AeroQuip lines. I wish I had some. We've got some here somewhere. I just didn't have time this week to kind of dig them out and show you. But another time I'll do that. And you know, AeroQuip the lines we use come in a couple different ways. There's a standard stainless steel, which I'm sure you've all seen, stainless steel brake lines. That's typically like a dash 4. And stainless steel is what's been around forever. It's the most common. There's also newer lines that are actually not steel on the outside. They're Kevlar over PTF, whatever it is, tubing. And we use that a lot because it's more flexible than the stainless steel line. It has equal properties as far as pressure and volume, but it's more flexible and it's a lot lighter. You know, race cars are always trying to save weight. So it's like the stainless steel, and then there's like the Kevlar coated. So that's real quick on that.
Just real quick question from Wendy. Where does the tank mount?
Where does the tank mount? Wherever you want to. I will typically mount the tank in behind the roll bar, in somewhere in the rear passenger seat. That way it puts that weight on the opposite side of the car as the driver and behind the driver. And we get as low as we can, but you know, you can't get it too low because you still got to drain it out every now and again. So that's typically where it goes. You know, different race cars will have it in different places, but you know, that's where I like to stick it. That way it's not too far from the front, because the further away it is, then you know, the more line you need, which is heavy and expensive, and it just, you know, I kind of keep it as close but as far as I can. So that's where the oil tank goes. Moving right along, I gotta hold it up. Got a dry sump. Talked about transforming your driving experience. The 5-day workshop. Oh, remember to invite your friends. I think I had some notes in here from people that invite people every week. Usually I have 3 pages. This week I have 4 pages. I think Adolfo always invites the 7904 Mustang Road Racer HPD Autocross Club, and Brad shares with the Track Guys Performance events. And certainly that's kind of, if you've got a group that thinks they can get some value out of what I talk about, certainly share this with them. And if you can't catch it live, then we also have the reruns on YouTube as well as in the Speed Therapy Society. And like hopefully in the near future we're going to be able to simulcast into YouTube Live. Okay, now kind of like the big subject. Pages, pages, pages. It's either stumbling through my pages or looking at all the signs that Carrie holds up for me. But I get there. So oversteer and understeer. Man, what a subject. There are so many things that affect oversteer and understeer. And for those that haven't been with us before, definition of oversteer and understeer is very, very simple. Understeer is when the front of the car hits the wall first. Oversteer is when the back of the car hits the wall first. So understeer is the car won't turn, and understeer is the car won't turn. Oversteer is when the back kind of wants to kiss the wall. The number of things that affect oversteer and understeer is extensive. I mean, there's a full range of things. Tire pressure, shock, springs, sway bars, diff, alignment. I mean, there's so many things that will affect that. When that subject came up, I went back and I dug out, this is going back a ways, I dug out something I used to take to the track with me all the time, way back a long time ago. You probably can't read that, so it's my quick track reference. And in here, I have all the different type of scenarios, understeer, oversteer, causes and effects, roll bars. I mean, this is just my quick reference sheet. And I got this from my, it's got like lots of stuff. And I got this from one of the books of my hero back then, Carol Smith. You know, back when I was learning all this stuff, trial and error, a lot of error, but you either win or you learn. So that's what I look at. So, I mean, when his books came out, it was like, oh. His first one came out in '75, Prepare to Win. And boy, I thought that was gospel. I mean, I read through that all the time. His next one came out in '78. It was Tuned to Win. I read that cover to cover. And then in '84, it was Engineer to Win. And then in '90, he came out with like plumbing, hardware, things like that. But I mean, that was my education, those 3 books from Carol Smith. And I mean, it cut down my guessing, my mistakes, you know, my trial, error. And it was kind of like, there was no internet back then. There was nobody really teaching any of this stuff. That's why you guys are kind of lucky that I'm willing to share all that stuff I've done. And you know, just looking here, now this, you have to remember, this is back when I was doing Formula cars and sports cars, mostly Formula Fords, Formula Bs, Super Bs, and Atlantics. In fact, I still have a picture back in my trusty toolbox of 50 years of the Dwayne McLean's car. I hope you can see all that. That's when getting him strapped in, and that's, you know, kind of ready to head out the pit lane. That's a Rolt RT1. That was about, I think, 1978 maybe. But that was Rolt RT1s were just amazing cars. They were sturdy. They were simple, easy to work on, easy to drive. It was a Formula Atlantic car, and Atlantic is an open wheel with that's pretty good size, you know, wheels. It's got downforce, and it had a 2-liter BDA, I think, Cosworth BDA, that made, I can't remember, somewhere close to 200 horsepower. The cars were really, really fast. They had good brakes, big tires, downforce, and a lot of power. Anyway, this is kind of what my guide back then when I was doing those cars and learning all this stuff. And just to kind of give you an idea, I just read through this, and this takes me back a long ways. Understeer, corner entry understeer, won't point and gets progressively worse. Common complaint caused by insufficient front track width, front roll stiffness too high, front roll center too low. Remember we talked about in my front grip kit to bring the roll center up? That's why. Insufficient front shock absorber, bump resistance, insufficient front downforce, excessive dynamic positive camber on outside. That's camber gain, positive camber gain, which again we've talked about, running a lot of negative camber. Braking too hard or too late. You know, that's something that engineering can't fix. A lot of drivers will brake too hard and too late, and then try to turn the car, and the car won't turn. That's a matter of driving. Too little front roll assistance, falling over the outside due to track. Corner entry understeer, car initially points, then washes out. Too much front toe out, insufficient front download, insufficient front roll center compensation, nonlinear load transfer due to the roll axis inclination, insufficient front wheel travel and droop, too little front bump shock resistance. Okay. Corner entry understeer, car points and then darts, insufficient front wheel travel, either bumper rebound, too much front bump rubber, nose being stuck to the ground due to ground effect. It gets more. Corner exit understeer. Now, there's a point to this I'll get to in a little bit. This corner exit understeer, which really keeps you slow coming off the corner. Excessive mid-corner speed. Actually, also early apex will do that. Or the first step must be reduced. The corner entry understeer. See, too early of an apex. And persist. You know, rear anti-squat. And again, rear anti-squat helps front under. That's why we put anti-squat in the rear grip kit in the back. Anyway, you get the idea. Now, just touching on this, oversteer, corner entry oversteer. Now, somebody tells me they got oversteer, understeer. My question is it oversteer at corner entry, at mid corner, or corner exit? Because every single stage has a different cause and effect. Now we're getting into oversteer. Diabolical rear lockdown, broken or non-functional outside rear shock, front end roll bar, severity of limiting rear suspension travel causing interference, ridiculous spring rate, or any roll bar, slight feeling of tiptoeing, hunting for the corner, and it can be excessive. Corner exit oversteer, worn out limited slip, insufficient rear spring, too much rear roll stiffness, too much rear camber, too much rear roll stiffness. Now remember, with the rear grip kit, we take the rear sway bar off. So we take rear roll stiffness out and then fix that with geometry. So this is kind of, I learned my lessons a long time ago. Too much rear roll stiffness, too much rear camber, too little downforce, too little rear toe in. That's for the IRS cars. Corner exit, sudden the car takes it set and then breaks loose. Insufficient rear suspension travel, dead rear shock, too much bump rebound rubber, too much throttle applied to the driver. Driver was applying throttle before the axle settled. So it's kind of like this whole oversteer understeer thing it's a really big question. It's really complex and really complicated. And again, when somebody says I've got understeer, first question: corner entry, mid corner, or corner exit? Now I'll just give you some typicals in a Mustang. Understeer, from turn in to the asthma. It's that time of year. From turn in to the apex can either be not enough toe out, not enough camber, too big of a spring in the front, understeer on corner exit, as we got adjustable shock. Maybe there's not enough rebound to hold the car down, put pressure on it. Could be roll bar adjustment. Again, springs, getting the right spring matchup. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things it could be. An oversteer in the back, again with a live axle Mustang, and this kind of applies to all cars, but with a live axle Mustang, they're kind of a unique animal. Is if you get to the gas too soon, while the car's in roll, going to overload the outside tire, and it's going to break loose. That's why the rear grip kit, we add anti-squat, feet forward bite, and bring that roll center down. We ditch the sway bar, okay? Remember rear roll stiffness? We ditch the sway bar, and we fix the rear with geometry, bring the roll center down. So the car stays, your axle stays a little leveler. And also remember here, understeer, if the front roll center was too low, we bring the front roll center up. Front roll center up, rear roll center down. And by doing that, the car doesn't want to roll up as much going into in the middle of a corner. And because you always have to, with Mustang, wait. You can feel that inside tire get light. You wait till the axle is set enough to have grip that you can put your foot back in the gas. Well, with front roll center up, rear roll center down, the roll between the two isn't as great. So you actually get back to the gas a lot sooner, and typically before we even get to the apex. So an understeer, oversteer, and again, tire pressure. We talk about tire pressures a lot. You'd be surprised how much a half pound influences tire handling. I mean, oversteer could be a matter of just a pound or half a pound of air in the rear tires. Understeer could be as little as half a pound or a pound of pressure in the fronts. So it's kind of like everything else. You kind of have to think about what's doing. And I need you guys to think about, not just do things, think about what's happening. Try to understand what's happening, and then from there you can kind of think, you start eliminating what it could be until you find out what it is. So I mean, understeer, oversteer, that's a like I say, it's a very big subject. And have we got time for a few questions?
Yep.
Got time for a few questions.
You walk on over, you take a sip of water.
Take a sip of water while she walks on over. That's my instructions.
I think you talk so fast that you put a 2-hour program into a 1-hour program.
No, I'm trying to give them their value.
Okay, so we have a couple questions here. Let me go. Okay, here's just a couple comments. So Christopher, he's over in Bulgaria, and he's been with us for a while. He made a comment, and I thought this was interesting from some of your advice. He said, I want to thank you for all the advice you've given me over the last few months. Last week, I was at my local track and improved my time by 1.3 seconds, thanks to your alignment specs and advice on the 275/35 all around. The car is amazing. Now, he has an S550.
Yeah, it's an S550 car.
So that was nice. Also, Mark McIsaac shared a link, so if everybody wants to look in the comments area, on a test between a straight pipe and an H pipe.
Oh, that'd be kind of interesting. Yeah, that's good information.
Okay, and then we have Rick Fowler and Tim Allen was interested in this. What do you recommend for replacing a worn-out factory Fox body steering rack?
A worn-out Fox body steering rack.
And this is for, now this, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Tim was asking if it was for street sport or track or drag racing. So Rick's application is for street. I don't know if that will help you.
Okay. I'm pretty sure, I mean, it's a long time since I worked with those cars, but I'm pretty sure steering racks on Fox and SN95 are about the same. Maybe the tie rods are a little bit different. If I was updating any Fox or SN95 steering, we found a company that is reproducing the 2000 Cobra R steering racks. I would recommend that. And they also do, they refurbish regular steering racks, Cobra steering racks. So either get a refurbished one, or we have access to Cobra R steering racks, which have better ratio. It's a whole bunch better. So that's what I would recommend. Then, of course, if the car is lower, don't forget your offset rack bushings and move the rack up.
Okay. see, Paul Dondero. He has a V6 Mustang, and there's a few other people with a V6 S197 Mustang in the group. He says, hey Kenny, you have any suggestions to get more power out of the V6 motors? He has a 2001 with all our suspension mods on it.
Okay, more power, that's another big rabbit hole question. I mean, the easiest thing to do is headers, exhaust, cold air, and a tune. Now beyond that, you have to really get into the motor and start making power. And we've got a customer, Chris, who's actually building a just killer V6 track car. He's had the heads sent out. He's done a lot of port work on the heads. He's had special valves made up, cams. So he's going to make a lot more power in the heads. And once you get beyond the exhaust, cold air, and a tune, it starts getting expensive. Now you might think about a supercharger. I'm not a big supercharger fan for track cars, but if you don't get a centrifugal. That's kind of works like a turbo, so it doesn't create as much heat, and try to get air to air if possible. But I mean, all the power in any engine comes from the cylinder heads. Torque comes from displacement. Power comes from cylinder heads. The more cylinder heads, intake and exhaust, the more air you get in, the bigger bang you make, the more power you make. So I mean, the little things, full headers and exhaust. Of course, I'm going to suggest Bassani. Cold air kit, we can get those and get a tune, so to put a good tune on it, and that's gonna pump up the power a little bit.
What would you do first? Maybe the cold air kit if you're on a budget?
On the budget, I do cold air kit first, then the headers and exhaust. But then if you do the headers and exhaust, sometimes you may have to have the car retuned. The cold air kits, some of the cold air kits we have actually come with a tuner. And sometimes the tuner has a couple of different tunes in there, so that's something we'd have to check on for you. But that's kind of, oh, I know. Pedal Max. Pedal Max is the most awesomest pedal. It's like a turbocharging your accelerator. On these drive-by-wire cars, the signal between your gas pedal and the computer is kind of low and slow. With this little teeny plug-in thing here, it plugs in between the pedal and the car, and what it does is it turbocharges or supercharges the signal from your foot to the computer. And actually comes with a little dial. You can dial from 0 to 100. In my cars, I've put them in all my car for like rain, snow, parking lots. I'll keep it at 0. Because if you have it at 100 in a parking lot, the car wants to jump really fast. Driving on the highway, I usually have it set about 70%, because it gives. I mean, you just don't have to tip in your car just a little bit, and it picks up and goes. And then also with Automax, it downshifts a lot faster and quicker. And turn it to 100%, and you're going to think you added a turbocharger to the car because the car just flies. So there's a couple of things. I mean, that's about as easy as it gets. Just simple plug-in, and I haven't seen the data, but it has been shown that actually picks up torque in the mid-range or bottom end. I'll have to double check on that, just simply because the signal to the computer is faster, so it actually gets torque built up sooner. So actually pick up power and torque by changing the signal to your computer.
So Mark McIsaac says,
shameless product plug, but it's a great product, trust me.
Mark McIsaac says he took your advice in the last few weeks from one of your shows, and he added the throttle max, and he said it was a huge improvement with it was a great mod.
Okay, yeah, who was that?
Mark McIsaac.
Mark, he added a pedal max, and he just said it was a huge improvement, which it is. I mean, you notice it right away.
A couple more comments on the V6. Christopher Sauter said, if you have a 3.7 liter port the intake manifolds, that wakes up the motor. This requires a tune though.
Okay, well that's Chris is the one that's building this killer V6 track car. In fact, we're gonna have some products that's going on the car we'll use for show and tell coming up. This guy's doing it right. So, well, I'll show some of the cool parts he's gonna put in this car in the coming weeks.
Okay, Chris Allen, cold air kit, sourcing from outside the engine bay, correct? So many are filters on a stick sourcing air from inside the engine bay, which is not usually good for cool ambient air grabbing.
Boy, what a great comment. And absolutely true. A lot of cold air kits just have an air filter that kind of just sticks there right in the engine compartment. I have also seen like some turbo kits that have the air intake right in the engine compartment. And all you're doing is sucking hot air, you know, and hot air is less dense air makes less bang in the engine. So if you get a cold air kit, make sure that you're getting outside air. And if you know, sometimes a lot of cars will even modify some, like take some plugs out and move some things in the radiator area just to get more cool air in. Or some of them, like for the SN95s, actually go into the fender well. You want to try to get as cool air as possible, because you know you're sucking hot air in, you're just kind of defeating the purpose. It'll make power when it's cold, but as soon as it gets hot, I mean you're killing your power with hot air. And a lot of times, ones that are open on the top, and if it still gets cold air from the front, make sure you're getting a good seal on the hood. If not, go to your hardware store and get some like tape-on foam, thick foam, and put it around so you're sealing off, so you're not sucking in hot air, because hot air defeats your purpose. But what a great question! Thank you for that. A great comment.
Yeah. Okay. This is going back to the V6. And I think most of the people can read these comments, but I think it's important that you know about them too. Chris Otter said that Ford has restrictions built into the lower manifolds. I ported mine and it made a big difference.
Okay, there's a big tip, and that's you can do that without having to breaking into the motor, just having the intake manifold ported.
Okay, and
so I think that would be after your cold air kit that sucks cold air now, not hot air, and then exhaust.
Okay, if it came
and
down,
pedal max.
If it came down to one Carroll Smith book, which one would you recommend to be the best?
I think, at the stage you guys are at.
Everybody's all over the place.
Yeah,
So you've got some smart people out there.
I mean, I had all of them, and I'd read them to death. But the progression that he did, prepare to win is kind of like the first one. That tells you how to get your car ready to win. Okay, prepare to win, and then tune to win gets more into, well, this is where all this came from. The tune to win tells you more about tuning the car to win. So I mean, I'd get prepared to win first, because your car has to be prepared to win before you can win. And then I'd get tuned to win second, because once the car's prepared, then you can tune it to win. So that's my recommendation. And engineer to win, I think that might be more than you guys need at this point. And then the hardware and plumbing, that's always a good book. But yeah, I'd say prepare to win first and then tune to win. It's the same order that I got them in.
Okay, and then question on, okay, recommended engine oil weight for the track.
Recommended engine oil for the track, okay. For track cars, I stick with what the factory recommends. If it's 520, we'll run Mobil 1 520. If it's 530, we'll run 530. Now on race cars, it's a whole different engine, it's a whole different oiling system, and typically we'll run whatever the engine builder recommends. So I mean, I don't change any oil for the track. I mean, these cars these days run on such low viscosity oil that it doesn't make any difference. Just make sure you change your oil often though. So in our just looking on the oil caps at 520, run 520, 530, run 530. Like I say, we use Mobil 1 synthetic. You pick up a little power with a good synthetic oil. Or there's other synthetic oils too. I mean, there's just about every major brand has a good synthetic oil these days.
Okay. Just as a quick question here from Chris Sauter. He says, aside from the inspired picture in the background, have you ever driven a real or reproduction GT40, and your thoughts on it?
Have I ever driven a real? No. I wish. I never did a reproduction either. Someday I might. But when you get to those reproductions, there's only one that's really good and worth it, and that's the one that comes from South Africa. I think it's performance. Also, as far as Cobra kit cars, there's only one that's worth the money. That's the same thing, the one that comes from South Africa. I mean, they put a lot of engineering into the cars. I mean, they are just, brilliant. So I've seen some of the other Cobra kit cars I've seen. I wouldn't drive them on track if my life depended on it, because it would. I mean, some of the suspension geometries they have is bad. I mean, they just kind of put them together. The design is not that great. Most of the American copies of Cobras have more to do with the cool body than what's underneath. I mean, if you really want to get a car like that, get one of the South American cars. If you've got another brand, certainly, if you want to make it work better, get a hold of me. I can do an engineering project and redo the suspension geometry to make it work better. But GT40s, the South African ones, hands down the best ones.
Okay, Herstifer has a question on, he says the Ford driving school runs their Coyotes on 5W50. Any thoughts on that?
Well, they're doing
to run it in his car, in his Coyote motor. Sorry.
You can if you want. The more viscosity, that's a top number. The 520, 530, that's all viscosity. Back in the old days, we didn't have synthetic oil. I mean, we'd run anywhere from 30 to 50 weight racing oil. And what I learned, one school I did go to, I can't remember, this is a long, long time ago, was a Quicksilver engine school on building Formula Ford motors. And, they did an experiment on the dyno. Formula Ford motors are low force 1600 cc Kent motors. And they ran different oil viscosities. And as the oil viscosity went up, the power went down. So you'll see, a lot of, they're probably running the 550 on their track cars for durability and long term, because they're running those cars, flat all day long, all week long, all month long. I know that there's a lot of race teams that will actually run zero weight viscosity oil just for power. And you can run low viscosity oil as long as you've got good oil pressure. You have to have oil pressure above 30 pounds. It gets below that with viscosity, and you're going to start hurting your bearings. So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily run them in the 550. Like I say, if you're running your car in and out all day, that's a good oil, because it's going to actually improve the oiling system and give it more long-term durability. Because they really thrash those cars. But if for the track, just use whatever the manufacturer recommends in a synthetic, a pure synthetic, and just make sure you always keep your oil pressure. And remember, the more you add to the car, the faster it gets in the corner, the more you need a road race oil pan, because oil will slosh up the side of the pan, and that's the worst thing to happen. I'll give you an example. I don't remember what this was when I had my what was the name of my red Cobra? What did we call it?
Ruby?
No, the one back in '96.
I can't remember that one. Something Racer.
Yeah, I think it was the Red Racer.
Mm-hmm.
I had a '96 Cobra. We did a lot of turbocharging Cobras back then, and we did a lot of fixing turbocharged Cobra broken engines, because the engines back then were pretty weak. They built the pistons for fuel economy, which meant the ring land was about that far from the top of the piston, which it took just the teeniest bit of not good gas, the smallest part detonation, and it would erode that top land and you break a piston. Anyway, what we did, anytime we rebuilt them, we overbore it, so we ended up with 289 cubic inches, which I thought was kind of a cool number. But I had my Red Racer at Pocono we're doing an episode for what's Davis's show?
Oh, Motor Week.
For Motor Week. We used to we had a lot of cars in Motor Week back a long time ago, and we were at Pocono, and at Pocono you come down, you have big long up a straightaway, and down you brake hard to get into the infield. I actually had an AccuSump on the car at the time, which is AccuSump is an extra oil container, let's call it, that's cylindrical and pressurized. You put extra oil in the car, and as oil runs, it pressurizes. If you lose oil pressure, it puts oil back into the engine. And that didn't really work for this situation. What happened is, coming down off that hard bank so many different times, basically, they blew the motor up. It was a rod, or I think a rod went out. And what we discovered afterwards is that in deceleration in the 4.6 cars, when oil sloshes all the way up to the front of the oil pan gets thin in the front, while the oil sloshes up there, it hits the hits the timing chains, and that becomes an extremely effective oil pump, pumping all the oil up in the top of the motor, and you run out of oil on the bottom. So that's why we used to build our own oil pans back then, and we put a great big fence up in the front to keep the oil from rushing up, and then we added volume, and then little fences on the bottom so you can maintain oil pressure. So lesson learned.
I'm going to have you take a sip, and I'm going to chat for a minute. Okay, so we have, Del Hughes is interested in if you'll share this information, but we've had a lot of other people interested. I'm wondering if maybe, if anybody could comment if they'd like Kenny to do like maybe a 1-hour master class just on car setup. So just comment yes, you'd like to have that.
Well, you're committing me to something.
So, and then we
Did he say he'd like to see this? You know?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll put this into a PDF, and you know, we'll stick it in the section for the units.
Yeah, that might go well with what you're talking about.
Yeah,
in the workshop.
it'll be in the Speed Therapy Society, and if you're not a Facebook person, get a hold of Carrie info. I've been talking too much. info@kennybrown.com, and she'll get a copy off to you. I mean, this was kind of like my Bible. I learned a lot from this, and like I say, back then there wasn't anybody to teach me anything. You know, it was just trial and error, and to me it was trial, error. But you know, you learn. If you don't learn from your mistakes, you're not learning anything.
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions, but we need to talk about this one more time. You can go a little more detail.
Okay, we're over time, you know.
Oh, I know you. I know.
Well, we're over time because we had a technical glitch in the beginning, so I guess we can go a little long.
Yeah.
Your comment, or you do this
Oh,
first?
you're doing
Oh,
it.
God. What would I do without her? Okay, Speed Therapy Society, Transforming Driving Experience, June 22nd through 26th. That's the week after Father's Day. It's going to be an hour each evening, Monday through Friday, starting at 7:30. We might go a little earlier on Friday. We're talking about that. We'll let you know about that later. And you can sign up for Speed Therapy Society. I don't know if there's a sign up here or not, but
Yeah, we'll put another link right now.
okay, put another link up. And again, the first critical steps of the transforming driving experience that a lot of people miss, and then building a performance platform, which is, I mean, I preach performance platform. Anybody's known me for a long time. I mean, that's it. Performance platform is where performance is. I mean, if you got a big motor and you can't put the power to the ground, you got nothing. You know, you got nothing but something that'll smoke the tires, and you have a big tire bill. You know, the chassis, suspension, wheels, tires, brakes. Those 5 things are the elements that build your performance platform. And it's because of that, like with Ruby, my 2012, it was a GT4, you know, one of my conversions with pretty much everything. And all I had was a Boss motor with cold air and exhaust. And like at Road America, those long straightaways, I mean, you'll see it in that one video. I mean, I jumped a Viper off corner 14. In fact, I had to take my foot out of it so I didn't run into the back of him. I jumped him off 14, had so much more exit speed. He was not able, even with all that power, not catch me down the straightaway. And it also, I mean, you know, I fly past like on the straight between 3 and 5. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've just flown past GT500s because they got more weight in the front. They have to go slower through the corner, and they have to, even with my suspension makes it better, but I have to go slower through the corner, and they have to wait to get that power down. They can't use all of it right away because they just smoke the tires. So, I mean, it's like chassis, suspension, wheel, tire, brakes if you want to go fast or faster, fastest, either way. So, and then we're going to be talking about dialing the car in, some tips and tricks. I almost said a naughty word. On techniques and car preparation. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. This is the first time I'm doing it. There's an awful lot to cover. I'm going to try to do the best I can to get this done in 5 days. And, you know, like I say, I'm just sharing with you guys what I've learned the hard way. So a couple more comments.
Yeah, these are really quick, and then we're done.
I'm almost out of coffees, but it works out.
Kalian Racing, what cooling mixture for track in a radiator?
Oh, great question. What cooling mixture for track in the radiator? Okay, if it's the summertime, water, straight water. Race cars only run water. Sanctioning bodies will not let you run any kind of coolant, because if you blow a radiator hose, you put coolant on the track, it's like oil. It takes forever to clear it up. Also, water transfers heat better. So what I use for track cars is pure water plus a water, like water wetter. There's a bunch of different brands out there that actually makes the water wetter, I guess, so it transfers heat better, but just water. That's all you need. Of course, in the wintertime, you got to put coolant back in. Don't forget, or you're going to have a problem.
Okay, just real quick, Rick Fowler, he used to work for us, by the way. He said the car name was Red Rocket. And
Red Rocket, that's what it was. Thank you.
It's in the 0 to 150 to 0.
Yeah, it was in the motor.
No, car and driver.
Car and driver 0 to 150 to 0 test, and that was kind of quick story. That was kind of an interesting thing we were doing. It was like a whole bunch of segments, a whole bunch of driving things to this test, and Tommy Kendall was driving my car with me, and we're on one back road, and all of a sudden we heard all these ding, 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 and all of a sudden bad things started happening. Well, one of the pulleys on the Vortec supercharger system let go, and we had all these ball bearings sliding all over the place. And we actually had to have, this was on like the day before the big test, we actually had to have somebody we were also at an event in Nashville, I think. So we had, was it Kurt that we sent up? We got Kurt on a plane from Nashville to Detroit and had Vortec overnight a new pulley, and we put a new pulley on so we could make the test.
And there's more stories to that, but we won't go into detail.
Yeah.
But we think we had some people tampering with the car before the test, so they do better. But anyway,
one more thing, I actually made the wrong choice on brake pads. I had like my track pads in there, and what I should have had is like a really good street performance pad. The reason being is because track pads have to get hot before they grip. In the 0 to 150 to 0, I mean, the pads are cold, you jump on them, and it's going to take a little bit of time for the pads to warm up. And my braking distance was longer than what it should be. If I'd have made a choice of a better brake pad, maybe I keep talking about getting the right pad for the right application. I used a high-performance street pad. It would heat it up faster. I had more friction sooner, and I would have stopped better. It's a side story.
This is mainly, I'm asking this because it refers to something you talked about earlier. Tim Tomasak, do you have a preferred road race oil pan for a Coyote? Was an FR pan that went on a 302 SR?
Well, yeah, the oil pan that went on, the Ford oil pan's great, but something ridiculous. It's like $900,000, something like that. What we use almost all the time is just a Canton pan. It's simple. It's not that expensive. It's got everything that we need. So we've got a Canton road race oil pan is what we use, and let us know we can get you one. In fact, that's where this. Yeah, we do a lot with Canton. That's where this oil tank came from. I don't know if you can read it. It might be upside down, backwards, or shiny. This is a Canton 10-quart Sump oil tank.
Okay, I think that's going to be it. Mark, Isaac also said water reduces surface tension, increasing heat transfer.
That's what it does. I remember now.
Okay.
The water it reduces surface tension, so it transfers heat better. I knew wetter makes it wetter.
Got a lot of smart people out there in this group. Okay.
Yeah, that's what's cool. If you're not in this group, join it. I mean, we got really cool, smart people. Speed Therapy Society, and the information you guys are exchanging is like, and I'm trying to teach you what I learned by making mistakes, and you're helping other people do from what you've learned. So this is really cool. This is working out better than we ever expected. So you keep it up.
So we'll put a link in there on the Speed Therapy Society as well.
Yep. Okay. Link on Speed Therapy Society.
Okay, that's it.
So I guess that's it for this week. Hopefully next week we're going to work on technology and see if we can do a simulcast with Facebook and YouTube at the same time.
If there's any issues, just stay on, and we'll hook up with the phone again. So
yeah. If the technology monster jumps in again, we'll revert back to the old telephone. But I mean, this should be a lot better. I mean, I'm looking forward to it, because instead of me using phone, I'm using my laptop, which would be a lot better, because then I can see some of your comments coming in, which right now I can't see. So listen, it was been great. We went a little over, but then we started a little late, thanks to the technology monster. And hopefully we're gonna like fight him off next week, and so we can do the simulcasting. And so send your questions in. You got to remember, I talk about what you guys want to learn about, and I get all my talking points or talking subjects from the Speech Therapy Society questions. So you got more questions, send them in, and I'll try to answer them the best I can.